A lost tomb, a stolen body, a vanished legend. Alexander the Great's final resting place has remained one of history's greatest enigmas. Initially buried in Memphis, his remains were later moved to Alexandria, yet today, no trace of his tomb remains. What happened to the grave of the man who conquered the known world? From the Mediterranean to the Indus, Alexander the Great's empire reshaped the ancient world, leaving a legacy that endured long after his death. For centuries, his tomb in Alexandria stood as a monument to the man who had reshaped history, but the tomb eventually disappeared, and its fate still remains unknown. How could history forget where the greatest military leader of all time was buried? And after 2,000 years, will his tomb ever be found? At just 32 years old, Alexander had achieved what no one before him had even dreamed possible. He had conquered the vast Persian Empire, forging a realm that spanned continents. But his relentless ambition was cut short in 323 BCE when he died suddenly in Babylon. The world's most powerful man had left no heir, no successor strong enough to hold his empire together. Alexander's death plunged his dominion into chaos. His generals, the Diadochi or successors, scrambled for control, and with no clear ruler, his very body became a prize. To control Alexander's corpse was to claim his legacy. One of Alexander's best generals and closest companions, Ptolemy I, took the boldest step. As Alexander's funeral procession made its way toward Greece, Ptolemy seized it and diverted it to Egypt. In Memphis, the ancient capital of the pharaohs, Ptolemy laid Alexander to rest. But this was more than an act of reverence. It was a political masterstroke. By possessing Alexander's remains, Ptolemy legitimized his rule over Egypt, founding a dynasty that would endure for nearly 300 years. According to some accounts, in Memphis, Alexander's body was embalmed in a sarcophagus filled with honey, a method believed to preserve flesh from decay. This was a fitting treatment for a man whose legend was meant to endure for eternity. Yet Memphis was never meant to be the final stop on Alexander's journey. He had reportedly wished to be buried at the temple of Zeus Ammon in Siwa, where the temple's oracle had once declared him the son of a god. Sometime in the late 4th or early 3rd century BCE, Alexander's body was moved from Memphis, but not to Siwa, rather to the city he had founded, Alexandria. There, in the very heart of the empire he had built, a grand mausoleum was constructed. It was called the Soma or Sema, meaning body or grave marker. This was no ordinary tomb. It was a monument to a ruler who had ascended beyond mortality, a site of worship and reverence. Pilgrims and politicians alike came to stand before the conqueror's remains, seeking inspiration, or perhaps the illusion of inheriting his greatness. The tomb itself was said to be a spectacular sight, enshrining Alexander's body in a lavish golden sarcophagus, later replaced by one made of glass or crystal. Surrounding the tomb were statues, inscriptions, and symbols of Alexander's divinity. It was not just a grave, it was a shrine fit for an immortal. For centuries, Alexander's tomb stood at the heart of Alexandria, drawing the most powerful men of the ancient world. Julius Caesar visited the tomb when he arrived in the city, standing before the sarcophagus of the man he sought to emulate. Octavian, the first emperor of Rome, did the same after defeating Mark Antony and Cleopatra and cementing his rule over Egypt. But these visits were not simply acts of homage, they were political gestures, an attempt to link their own power to that of the greatest military commander in history. Some visitors even took relics from the tomb. Caligula is said to have taken Alexander's breastplate for himself. Caracalla, on the other hand, placed his own garments upon the tomb as if transferring his own power to the long-dead king. Alexander's resting place remained one of the most sacred sites of the ancient world for generations. But eventually, and inevitably, the site began to slip into obscurity. As the 4th century progressed, the rise of Christianity and the fall of pagan traditions led Emperor Theodosius I to order the closure of temples, including the Shrine of Alexander. Looters came to strip the tomb of its treasures, and the massive tsunami of 365 reshaped Alexandria's landscape entirely. If the tomb lay within the royal quarter, it may have been among the structures swallowed by the disaster. And yet, the legend of Alexander's tomb refused to die completely. Centuries later, Arab chroniclers described seeing Alexander's tomb in Alexandria, long after the city's golden age had passed. The last known references to the tomb date back to the 16th century, but by then, the city of Alexandria was but a shadow of its former self, and the tomb was nothing more than a whisper in history. So, where did Alexander's remains disappear to? Some speculate that Venetian merchants may have unwittingly stolen them, mistaking them for the remains of Saint Mark. Others believe his tomb still lies buried beneath modern-day Alexandria, just waiting to be uncovered. Some suspect that the Mediterranean hides it beneath its waves. There are also theories that the body may have been intentionally moved again, perhaps hidden by later rulers as Alexandria fell to invaders. Could remnants of Alexander's tomb still lie beneath the bustling streets? Or has time erased all traces of it, leaving only stories and speculation? The final resting place of Alexander the Great remains unknown to us today. Over the centuries, kingdoms have risen and fallen, empires have expanded and crumbled, and still the question lingers: where is the body of the world's greatest conqueror? A king who sought to rule the earth, and a tomb that disappeared into legend. Perhaps Alexander achieved in death what he pursued in life, an existence beyond time, forever commanding the imagination of those who seek him. Perhaps the answer still lies beneath the earth, just waiting for the right hands to uncover it. Or perhaps some mysteries are just never meant to be solved.